good morning and a very special welcome to the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Michael McCormack. Sir, it's an interesting time governing in a pandemic. I don't assume you signed up for this, but you're in the job, helping the Prime Minister and the National Cabinet, and it must be an amazing time to be in government.
There's no manual for this, and we know that it's caused such heartache, not only on a health front, of course. More than 400 people won't have loved ones around their Christmas family table this year, and our condolences go out to those people who've lost loved ones, but such an impact on the economy, and that's why we've invested so heavily, $314 billion or so on JobKeeper, on JobSeeker, on Home Builder, on all those sorts of initiatives that we're trying to cushion the effects of COVID-19. This is a global pandemic. It is first and foremost very much a health disaster, but of course the economic effects are felt and they're far-reaching. And we want to make sure that we will do everything we can, and infrastructure is one of those things.
I said you are the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, and although it's a global pandemic, our audience are feeling the local effects in Western Sydney. What role, and to pay credit to the government, I said we had dinner with the Premier last night, her first outing since the pandemic for a very spatially distanced boardroom dinner. First boardroom dinner we've had to use microphones at for a while, but she was paying full credit to the federal government for stuffing up half the money for the airport rail, North-South Airport Rail in Western Sydney, in addition to obviously the airport. And I'd sat on the Moorebank board for some years as well under the great Kerry Schott. So that federal investment in transport infrastructure in Western Sydney, we see that as one of the stimuli that will help get us out of this.
Oh, absolutely. And look, I've worked very closely with the Premier, Gladys Berejiklian, and I've known her for many, many years, and certainly worked closely, of course, with Andrew Constance and Paul Toole, who share the portfolios in roads and transport, and making sure that infrastructure is very much a part of it. I mean, WestConnex M8, we talk about billions of dollars and millions of dollars, people's eyes glaze over. But when you look at that M8 saving around 30 minutes from Liverpool to the Southern Central Business District, you talk about NorthConnex saving around 15 minutes, bypassing 21 sets of traffic lights, and of course work on the Pacific Highway continues. And of course when it's completed, when we get that final piece of the puzzle, the Coffs Harbour bypass finished, I appreciate it's a long way from Western Sydney, but you'll be able to travel from Hexham to the Queensland border and shave 2.5 hours from what we used to travel when the Pacific Highway, as you would well recall too, was nothing more than really a goat track. And it's saving lives, but it's also building Western Sydney. I have to say, Western Sydney is on the cusp of greatness. It really is. And you look at Western Sydney International Nancy Bird Walton Airport. That is such a major project, and anybody who's driven in and around that area knows just how important that is. Already something like 1.8 million cubic metres of earth have been moved around. Of the 25 million we need to move, there's a lot of excavators, there's a lot of high vis, but whether it's roads, whether it's the connecting rail links, whether it's the new airport, Western Sydney's first airport, not necessarily Sydney's second, this is going...
Very this important. Is going to generate. We did that very early on. It was our first airport, as opposed to Sydney.
And Maurice Payne, my good friend Senator Maurice Payne, and Stuart Ayres have been at great pains to often remind everyone of that whenever they talked about Sydney's second airport. No, it's Western Sydney's first airport.
I have to let you on a little secret, Deputy Prime Minister. Having sat on the joint state-federal task force that recommended the Badgerys Creek site, and then led a campaign to convince, I think Tony Abbott's ultimate legacy will have been his get cabinet approval to build it. I was quoting a line that literally was made up about it being the only city of 2 million people in the world without its own airport. But it must be true because two prime ministers have said it again since. I can only imagine someone fact-checked it somewhere, but it's working, and we're very grateful. Speaking of airports, though, they're only useful if we have international borders that are open. I get all the concerns. We've got the West Sydney University, Sydney Uni, others in the region are struggling to get their people in. And every day Australians are struggling, calling me, how can I call someone to get their family back in? So I know all the challenges. Do we open borders before there's a vaccine? Are the two inexorably linked? What I know government business today has called for some certainty around a timing of the borders. What's your where do you think we're heading on that global?
Well, of course, only yesterday we looked at what we could do possibly in the vaccine. The trial that has been developed by Oxford University have done a deal with that UK-based company to ensure that every Australian will get a vaccine free when it is developed, when it is available, and when the trials have completed. And that is in its very late developmental stage. So that's exciting news. There's 160 vaccine trials going on around the nation, around the world, and of course many of them around our nation. But international borders, well, that's not just a matter for Australia. Of course, it's a matter for other countries to which we travel, and so. You know, some of those countries aren't going to be opening up their borders anytime soon if there's no vaccine or if the case rates and the mortality rate continues as it has. Australia's done very well when you look at the number of cases and the number of deaths through COVID-19 compared to other countries, but there's still a way to go, as you know, as I know, as unfortunately everybody knows, and of course no one has felt the impacts harder than perhaps our airports and our airlines. And we've made sure through the various measures, a significant amount of money has been spent in making sure 1.3 billion, and even more than that last time I looked, to make sure that we, through JobKeeper and through the various air network supports, and indeed even through the IFAM initiative, where the International Freight Assistance Mechanism, where we're getting Australian goods to those export markets, which would otherwise have to have been sold domestically. So there's a lot happening. I know that when Western Sydney Airport comes online in a few years' time, that's going to play an important part too. But for the here and now, it's very difficult, and it's really we look at it and we address each issue as it arises each day.
We dined also with your new CEO of the airport, Simon Hickey, last night. Congratulations on securing somebody with both a construction and aviation background. He's perfectly positioned to build and run an airport. And he was saying he's inherited a business that appears to be on time, on budget, as a big build. So that's a tremendous, congratulations. So you mentioned the National Cabinet, you're in the middle of this now, and we've also been talking to Nick Greiner about his time with Bob Hawke when there was a sort of dynamic federalism concept happening. Do you see the role of National Cabinet being a natural extension of some sort of reform of a sort of federalist system of government? Is there things you've learned and the Prime Minister's learned and the Premiers have learned, apart from getting rid of COAG and replacing it? Is there a next step of how we can end some of the duplication between different levels of government?
Never before have so many politicians of different political persuasions spent so much time together working for it on behalf of the best interests of the nation. And that has got to be seen as a good thing. I have to say the public have enjoyed seeing the spectacle of premiers and chief ministers and the Prime Minister working together, putting the politics aside and making sure that we're doing what's needed to get the nation through this pandemic. That said, I've also had weekly meetings with my transport and infrastructure ministers from around the country, and some good things have come out of that. More consistency when it comes to transport moving freely around the nation. Indeed, fast tracking some of the approvals processes which bog down the building of infrastructure and construction generally. So we've cut through some of that bureaucratic red tape. We're getting on with the job of building a better nation, and we're making sure that we, of course, address the health issues as well.
You mentioned, in a way, I think Australian governments have rebuilt trust in government amongst Australia. It's probably a sad reflection as Australians have come together through pandemic. The US appears to have gone further apart, which is the different dynamic of how a nation can respond to something of this nature. But I think all Australians talk about the greater sense of unity, of political unanimity, and of parochialism, which won't be here forever, but let's enjoy it while it lasts.
Well, indeed. And, we're all in this together, and we all want to get out of it together, and we will. And we will, because Australians are a very resilient bunch, whether you get them from the very remote corner of the nation or indeed in and around metropolitan areas. Western Sydney is going to play an important role and part in helping to rebuild our economy. It really will. It is one of the exciting growth areas of the nation. and we want to make sure that it's got the right infrastructure to enable it to be its best self.
So in very far southwest Sydney, I've got 12 little Angus steers running around. Am I likely to be able to sell them to China anytime soon? Is there are you
Well, you know,
confident our
that's the
agricultural markets will bounce back as well?
You can still be a what they used to call a Pitt Street farmer, but have that lifestyle. You don't actually need to go into the CBD of Sydney to
The
have
M8 is helping, by the way. The M8's helping.
Good job. Well, indeed, and you know, you can have the great lifestyle and still be not that far away from Sydney if you do need to go in there. But I say again, you know, Western Sydney is on the cusp of some really great things.
Just in winding up, so putting some of the economic and political issues aside, this has been the most amazing period of transformation, not only for countries and governments, but for us, all of us. How are you different as a family man, as a politician, as a citizen coming through this? What's sort of been your personal transformation story in this?
Well, initially, when of course everybody was told to stay at home and work from home, and of course you have to lead by example when you're the Deputy Prime Minister. I did just that. My wife commented that the very first week, it was the first time I'd actually spent 7 nights at home in a row in the almost 10 years I've been in Parliament.
And now, that was a positive or negative comment?
I was keeping count. But I have to say, the fact that you can have these Zoom meetings and really be available and accessible to anyone, anywhere, anytime, has proven that you can live anywhere and you can do just as good a job. You could be, and I've done many of these Zoom meetings, pulled up on the side of a country road, and I could have been in a boardroom in Sydney, Melbourne, or elsewhere. And in all honesty, for some of the backdrops that I've had, in some instances, people wouldn't have known where I was, but you can still work from those destinations and participate in the national dialogue. And so long as you've got the connectivity, you can do that. But I think it has drawn people, in a sense, closer together. Yes, of course, there's always going to be fraction and division when you've got a situation where, you know, everybody's scrambling for the next toilet roll. But and those sorts of things have, you know, they've played out, and we've seen that. It's been unfortunate. But by and large, I think Australians have looked out for each other. By and large, Australians have done the right thing and stayed at home and downloaded the COVID Safe app, and that has brought Australians closer together, and they've realised that this is a global situation. They've realised also how well Australia and New Zealand indeed have done, and our Pacific friends have done compared to the rest of the world with this situation. So we'll get through it. We'll get through it because we're Aussies. We'll get through it because we're, you know, we're a close-knit group, and hopefully we'll be so much better for it.
So you've been on a virtual Wombat Trail. The name
and quite frankly, at the end of the day, you almost end up square-eyed. But I think this dialogue we're having now is probably one of about 8 I'm doing today. The work has continued, and the long hours have continued, despite the fact that we've been in sort of lockdown, shutdown, call it what you like, ISO, all these new words too that have become buzzwords, social distancing, and these sorts of things. You know, doing this with your elbow rather than shaking hands.
Being in the Zoom sphere.
It's the new norm. We'll get through it, and we'll be stronger for it.
To finish up, in your 8 days straight at home, and you turn on the Netflix with your wonderfully NBN-enabled access these days. Were you a Michael Jordan documentary guy? Were you the Tiger King? What are you watching at home when you're not reading?
Well, I've got to tell you, I almost perhaps shouldn't, but I've been rewatching the Underbelly series, the ones out of the first 2 series. Not for any other reason, probably other than the fact that I think it's Australian drama is important, and I honestly would much rather watch Australian drama than I would watch anything else. And I almost am embarrassed to say it, but I did watch the full series of Mother and Son, which Ruth Cracknell just cracks me up, and Gary McDonald. Yes, I appreciate it's the 80s. I appreciate it's very old humour, but it is very funny, and you know, good Australian drama and comedy you can't beat it.
And for a leader of the National Party to watch all the problems of cities and underbelly, you can safely be ensconced in the bush, and that stuff doesn't happen out on the Wombat Trail. But so thank you for your time. I must ask, I noticed the Rex plane behind you. One little thing on ISO, got a wife who's coming hopefully back down from Queensland soon, and she always amazes me. She said she gets on a plane where she has to spatially distance in an airport, then gets on a plane where people aren't required to wear masks. That's the thing I'm probably most asked by people in a lay question around our policies on COVID. Do you think we'll have a time when that will probably be either by consumer demand or regulatory heading to masked airlines?
Well, I think what we'll do is we'll do what we've done all along. Let's take the best advice of the health experts. So if the best advice suggests that we wear masks and we wear them all the time, and that becomes the norm, well, so be it. I know going back to Parliament next week, we will probably be required, and it will be necessary to work to wear masks, other than perhaps when we're either in the chamber or indeed addressing the Parliament, but in and around the corridors and. And going to and from the House, I think we will be required to wear masks, and we need to show that sort of leadership. And if the health experts tell us that they need to be more prevalent in general day-to-day life, then that's what will happen.
I imagine all transport, it must be tough with enforcement, particularly in that high up in the sky, which I know that's a difficult.
Well, it is, and there's protocols around it, and I know, having flown both Rex and Qantas lately, it's not too often, but and I know Virgin have a protocol around these things too. Look, if you're asked to wear a mask, it's not a difficult thing for the hour or so that you're on a plane. Just do it, and it's safer for you and safer for others as well. If it gives people that level of self-assurance and comfort, then it's not too much to ask people.
There you go, people. The Deputy Prime Minister said, best done. So thank you for your time. Good luck in Wagga today, and thank you for the money and attention you're putting into Western Sydney as we face our own little regional part of this global pandemic. Hopefully we'll live up to the infrastructure confidence you've had in us.
Indeed, and I'm sure you will. That city deal, of course, continues. We've, of course, put $5.3 billion into that and other aspects of building the best infrastructure we can for Western Sydney. Keep being your best selves, and we'll get through this together.
Thank
All
you,
the best.
sir.
Okay.